Paul deciphered these signals and realized there was communication happening there, and as he interpreted it, it seemed to him that the military or the U.S. government was actively engaging in communication with extraterrestrials, with aliens.
Words are so important. Discovered, verifiable. How do they get away with parsing these strange words publicly when they make error, when they make some statement? These weasel words, it's as if lawyers write this stuff.
All right, today's deep dive: reality theater. This is this is a really prominent theme throughout UFO culture, and it's a very it's an unmissable topic here. So let's begin. Reality theater is it's about the deception. It's about the disinformation from all sorts of sources, but the government and other places that are actively attempting to disinform the citizens, the public, about UFOs. In this song, it starts with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, a little quote from them talking about weasel words. That's kind of, I think, a George Knapp term, weasel words. I love it. Weasel words, it's all of the... It's any official report about UFOs. There's always filled with these weasel words. They're very conniving. It's as if lawyers wrote them, right? Because they did. They very carefully dance around the truth, and they don't actively deny anything. Really, if you read their general words, they don't deny it. They just avoid it. That's all they ever do, is they use weasel words, terminology to defer away from the question. This song uses the narrative of Paul Bennewitz. Paul's story is a really, really sad story. Paul was an electrical engineer. He worked for our Coast Guard during World War II. Some kind of radio operator or something like that, I believe. So dude's a veteran. That makes this all the worse, first and foremost. Paul Bennewitz lived in New Mexico outside Kirtland Air Force Base. So there was a lot of military activity in the area for sure. Paul set up radio receivers, and he intercepted signals that were obviously of intentional nature. Paul deciphered these signals and realized there was communication happening there, and as he interpreted it, it seemed to him that the military or the U.S. government was actively engaging in communication with extraterrestrials, with aliens. Paul gets very obsessed very quickly. So there was a UFO conference, if you will, being held in New Mexico, and it had to do with cattle mutilations, because that was a thing that was occurring in the area. And believe it or not, ranchers and farmers and such get really upset when their investments get messed with. Gabe Valdez was a police officer in New Mexico. He's the son of a rancher, so I think the cattle mutilation thing hit home with him pretty good, and he believed his fellow ranchers and farmers and such when they told him that something weird was happening. So Gabe Valdez did his own investigations into the weird realm of cattle mutilations, which I will not deny is a real thing of sorts. But what it was, the cattle mutilations, is up for debate. We could certainly talk about that if anybody wanted to. I've done plenty of research there. But for the sake of this, we're just gonna say that Gabe was the cattle mutilation guy in New Mexico, and there was a UFO conference. Paul Bennewitz meets Gabe Valdez at this UFO conference, and they get pretty close. They get buddy about the topics, and next thing you know, Paul and his self-funded study of UFOs is kind of climbing the ladder as a ufologist, taking in some extra cases and learning things. He's filming lights above Kirtland Air Force Base. He's recording signals, and all of this path leads him to Bill Moore. William Moore was a ufologist, and he might have been like the leader of like MUFON at the time, like the Mutual UFO Network. Bill Moore starts telling Paul that he has the in with the military or the government, and he's feeding Paul information, and Paul's eating it up. Bill tells Paul that the signals he's intercepting are real, and that there's an underground base in New Mexico where these aliens do shit to people, and that there's potentially going to be an invasion of some sort. And I've even heard that they went as far as, I can't substantiate this, but I've heard they've even gone as far as setting up scenes for Paul to fly over, like, and see, like, actual visuals and, like, lights in the skies and all sorts of, like, over-the-top disinformation. Turns out William Moore was in cahoots with Richard Doty. Richard Doty was part of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI. I guess you could say by extension, so was Bill Moore. He was a pawn in that game, a proxy.
I didn't lie to Paul Bennewitz. I had a job to do. I wasn't a maverick. I just didn't go out and do this on my own. My supervisors told me, listen, we don't want him to go out to the public, go on camera and say, hey, I just tapped into a secret laser on Kirtland Air Force Base. Obviously, we can't have that happen. So all I had to do was say, well, you know what, Paul? Maybe what you did see was UFOs.
So between the fake UFO sightings and the manipulating his equipment or showing him false documents, I believe it's even like William Moore. Yeah, this is an excerpt from, I believe, Wikipedia. William Moore claimed that he tried to push Bennewitz into a mental breakdown by feeding him false information about aliens. And this is all declassified. This is all on record, so it's all very true, okay? Here's a paper trail here. They intentionally tried to push a veteran of the United States into having a mental breakdown just to preserve their secrets at Kirtland Air Force Base, whatever they may be. I'm not saying that it was anything wild. It was probably just standard run-of-the-mill secret military operations. I truly believe that it's just standard secret operations, but the extent that they were willing to go to push Paul ended up being institutionalized. Paul ended up having a breakdown and entering an institution for about a month or so, I believe, and he never fully recovered. Paul spent the rest of his life dealing with the trauma of this incident, and it was sanctioned by the government, and we have a history of that. The overall point, I guess, of the disinformation campaign against Paul was Paul fed this information that he received back into the UFO network and back into the community, and then people started then repeating this false information. And then when all of that information was deemed to be from a false source, an intentionally dishonest source, that sowed all sorts of doubt, like a ripple effect through the UFO community. And suddenly nobody knew what they could believe, what they couldn't believe, whether anybody was believable. And the whole topic, which was already in the realm of woo, then became completely just muddy. The water was unclear. Nobody knew what was what anymore. It was perfect. That's exactly what they wanted to happen. Let's talk about the willingness of certain government agencies to deceive people or directly harm American citizens for no great reason. I'm talking about MK Ultra. MK Ultra, I believe, officially began in 1953, government sanctioned, and it was targeted. And this is the Cold War era, mind you, but it was targeted on mind control and behavioral modification. They used drugs. They used hypnosis. A lot of people ended up dead. A lot of people ended up lifelong injuries. A lot of people ended up with mental illness. And this was all uncovered in the 1970s by an investigative journalist and the Church Committee. And ultimately, whenever the CIA got pressed for the release of the documents relating to MKUltra, they destroyed them all, making the case very hard to actually sift through. And we may never know all the sick, strange details of MKUltra, but we do know that a lot of people got hurt and nobody paid the price. You can see it now in the UFO arena whenever you have the current UAP House Select Committees and stuff that are being thrown together to try and pull this information out of the resources that have it, out of the agencies that house that information. And they just hit roadblock after roadblock. I mean, your Congress, your representatives, your people that are supposed to be able to have access to, especially there's a select group of Congress people who have access to even more top secret defense related stuff, just because everything is supposed to have oversight. Every project, even the most secret of secret projects, they might not know every detail of those projects, but they know that there's money being allocated and generally what it's being allocated for. And so far, there's been an extreme unwillingness to show the receipts on the UAP stuff. So that's certainly interesting. We'll always be denied access to the full story. I mean, and in a lot of cases, it's the right thing. I'm not saying that secrecy is always nefarious. I think in a lot of circumstance, especially related to our defense and weapons, they're rightfully so. You should protect us in that way. You do not want your enemies knowing what you're capable of or anything really. So I don't think it's wrong to have secrets, but I do think whenever it's a reality shifting secret like UFOs, I think on some level you have to be transparent, and even if that level is just it's happening, and they I guess. I've gotten that much out of them. It is happening. But I think after 40, 60, 60, 80 years of research on the topic, they should be able to tell us more. At least a little bit. But at the end of the day, they all try to keep us in the theater, right? As long as the show still runs the way they want it to run. P.S. My favorite part of this song was the redacted moment, like MLK and JFK and the redacted that shot them. I have to point that out because we use the Freedom of Information Act to get information that has been kept from us, freed from the clutches of the government all the time, but it's always covered in those big black lines, those redactions. So I thought it would be amusing to put a big black line in my song and redact it. So good luck figuring out who shot JFK and MLK. It's
and it shot them. The theater's always open and the show never stops. Things look small.